Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's your host, Gumball Head, with another episode of the Normal Isn't Necessary podcast, brought to you in part by the Gumball Head Sobriety Society. I have not been putting the intro music in lately because we've been having some issues with the way that it comes out really loud out of the chute. We will start doing that again here shortly. I do have to change the intro. It's the 7th of April, 2026, and here we go. Another road rant. Red car edition. On my way to work right now. 7:37 a.m. Sunny outside, but only 40 degrees. Cincinnati, Ohio. A beautiful day is upon us. 50 degrees is going to be the high. 50 degrees is where I like it to be. It's not cold. It's not hot. It's just below the part where I start sweating, but it's just above the spot where I start shivering. This is perfect weather for me. So, I'd like to hear your thoughts, comments, questions, concerns. Please address them down below or send us an email, normalisn'tnecessarypodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to have you on as a guest. Podbean is changing some of their policies and changing some of their programming. So we're going to start looking into additional alternate avenues. Still be able to record live, but we won't have the peanut gallery, or the machine, as I like to call it. Interactivity. However, I have been thinking about going back and doing guests on Facebook. We seem to have a pretty good collection of friends brewing on Facebook, so I'm in hopes that potentially we'll be able to start broadcasting there. Today I'm going to talk about our brains a little bit, as I like to do. I watched a documentary over the weekend. I watched quite a few documentaries, actually, over the weekend. One of them was called Hired Guns. I think it's available on Amazon Prime. And another one I watched was on Linda Ronstadt. But Hired Guns... Oh, and the other one was Let There Be Drums. That was the other one, Let There Be Drums. That one was focused primarily on drummers, and I really liked that one. There's a lot of musicians on that one that were, well, obviously drummers, but they focused a lot on the elements and rudiments of the drums, but most of them weren't famous, well-known drummers outside of those people that study percussion, study, the heartbeat of a band. Jason Bonham was on there, John Bonham's son. Plays with the John Bonham Experience. Chad Smith was on there a little bit. There were a lot of good musicians on there, and I really enjoyed that documentary talking about drummers and bands and stuff like that. But Hired Guns, that was the documentary that stood out, because that was session musicians and studio musicians who were hired to go on the road, and We've done a podcast with Alexandra, the metalcore girl out of California, and we love her. We think she's wonderful. I like her music, and I think she's very sweet, and I like her very much. She's a very, very great person. If you guys haven't heard that podcast, please jump over to the website, gumballhead.com. Check out the Get to Know You series there on the podcast. And you'll be able to find her podcast without much issue. It's Alex, A-L-E-X, Sandra, S-A-N-D-R-A. And just kind of listen to some of the music that listen to some of the conversation that her and I have. When she does shows, she typically has hired guns involved in the shows. So she hires these studio musicians to come and play with her, because she is the only person in her musical venture, but she has musicians that know her music. So these musicians, it's crazy, because as I was watching the documentary, some of these guys have to learn, they have 10 days to learn all the songs, learn all the songs in the band, and then sometimes they go on tour. But the downside to it is once that tour is over, so is payday. They have to go back to their normal everyday lives. One of them, when he's not touring with famous music acts, he paints houses. Another one takes care of the lawn of a famous musician. And but it was really nice, because the way that they did that documentary was not only did they have the hired guns on there, but they had some of the band members that these hired guns have toured with talking about the talent and the raw ability of these musicians. And hear Alice Cooper speak proudly of some of the people that have been in his band as hired guns and say, hey, you know what, I encourage you to do this. I fell in love with that guy even more because Alice Cooper is one of those musicians that are out there that he lives that dark. We look at him, we see the dark element, but the reality of it is, the dude is just a great, good-natured soul. Loves talking about music, loves sharing the love with the people in his band, and he treats them great. Another one was the guitar player who played with Mandy Moore, and then went on tour with Lizzie McGuire. Just kind of being a metal musician, and then going on tour with these acoustic sets, and going on tour with these pop stars. Just watching the different elements grow from these musicians. And when we interviewed the lead singer for Saving Abel, he talked about different opportunities that have arisen for him in the past, and kind of started correlating some of that. Started putting together my own musical theory when it comes to musicians in general. To go from one band to another, referring to the documentary that I watched with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, our brother Halil, that was very interesting to see just the growth of different bands, knowing that Flea went and played with different bands out there, and then eventually they came together to form the Chili Peppers, which ended up becoming the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and just watching their fame and notoriety grow through the 80s and 90s into the style that we know and love now of the funky rock metal that the Red Hot Chili Peppers gives us. But they were not that way in the beginning. Anthony Kiedis did not start out as a member of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He actually started out as a roadie for a different band, Anthem. So it's wild and crazy to see all these things that just kind of go together and intersect when it comes to music, because us as consumers, we sit back and we see that these bands are famous. These bands, oh man, they got to make a ton of money. And they don't necessarily do that. There's bands like Fugazi who still tour in a bus, a van. They still eat bologna. They still sleep on the floor. And then there's other bands out there like Five Finger Death Punch who tours, with 10 tour buses with graphics on the side, and each band member has their own tour bus. It's crazy to see, especially some of our favorite bands, how things progress and how things grow and how things are when it comes to the music that's out there, and to see how some of these bands, get around, some of these bands communicate, some of these bands, interact, but the biggest thing about hired guns, the one thing that I noticed the most was them talking about musician chemistry. The chemistry of the musicians in the band, the way that the bandmates are. If you're not cohesive with the unit, you're not going to be in the band for very long, especially as a hired gun. Some musicians like to show up and just kind of take part. Other musicians like to show up and show off. When they brought on the new guitar player for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, he wanted to play like Halil. He wanted to play like the old guitar player. He wanted to be like him. He wanted to mimic him. And it took encouraging from Anthony and Flea to have him come out of his own shell to become who they are now. It's just crazy. And that's one of those things with life is, we spend a lot of time trying to appeal and try to make other people happy. And then one day we just come out of our shell and we become who we are. And, sometimes it's loved and sometimes it's hated. I'm feeling that way lately with my job. I'm feeling that way lately with my children and my wife. And I've talked about it briefly on a couple of the other podcasts that we've done lately about being your own person, about being who you are. And, if people can fall in love with who you are, they're gonna realize very quickly who you aren't. And who you should be is different than who you are sometimes. And when we fall into the perils of addiction, we fall into the perils of attraction, sometimes we lose that ability to see who we are, or who we are meant to be, and our positivity falls to the wayside. So as we progress through this series of life, we need to start to focus on these things a little bit more. We need to start paying attention to how our lives can be manipulated by outside things, and how we can curate those outside things to create a positive experience for us in life. Last night, I was deep in thought throughout the evening, and my wife said to me multiple times, "Are you okay?" Yes. Very quick responses. "Is anything on your mind?" No. "Are you okay?" Yes. "Is there anything I can do for you?" There's nothing wrong. Sometimes there's not anything wrong, and sometimes we're so deep in thought and translation that we just don't want to break our concentration on what we're thinking about. Last night I had no issues. I was just existing. I was appreciative of the fact that the last couple of days I started off with cuddle puddles with my children and time with my kids, sitting there and appreciating the pure joy and beauty of my children, even as they sit there and scream and cry and yell. Looking at those things helped me to realize how much importance there is to life, being a role model and curating and teaching and guiding the youth that is out there. Someone had said something at our Easter get-together about, "He's so grown up, he's so mature." And my response was, a majority of that comes from the fact that we don't talk to them like babies. I don't talk to my kids like babies. I treat them as if they are, children, not adults, but they are children, but I don't do the baby talk. I speak to them in real words, because it's important for them to hear those, because as they grow up, they're going to hear those not just from the household, but from everywhere they go. They're going to hear those sentiments. They're going to hear those meaningful words that they will stumble across, and they'll hear in passing. They'll hear in conversation. They'll hear from their grandparents. They'll hear in school. They'll hear in the street. They'll hear on social media, YouTube, podcasts. That's why it's important to me to not talk to my children as if they are 2 years old and 4 years old, but talk to them as if they were human beings, not necessarily babies, not necessarily kids. But it is important to keep that communication open with the young ones, and keep it focused with the young ones. Keep the attention on the young ones, because they are ultimately going to rule our world someday as we get closer and closer to retirement age. Now, I've recently become a fan of health and my healthcare journey, and taking control of my life and my health again. Paying attention to those things that need to be paid attention to, getting back on my medications, sleeping with my durable medical equipment, my CPAP machine, trying to get as close to 8 hours a night of sleep as possible. CPAP machine is instilling that energy back into me, because I'm not dying while I sleep anymore. I'm actually getting restful sleep. I still wake up with migraines. I still struggle with, my heft and my size. But that stuff's going to the side too. Paying attention to the food that I put into my body and not overindulging in, eating an entire pizza pie or drinking multiple energy drinks or, soft drinks throughout the day. I've switched to coffee. Does it help? No, it doesn't really. It doesn't help at all. I want my sugar-laden, high energy, high caffeine, taurine, borine, and all that in my energy drinks. But now I utilize that more as a treat than I do as a must-have. And in addition to that, I found it to be a financial positivity when it comes down to the end of the week. Whereas I used to have $3 or $4, now I have 20. Doesn't seem like much, but definitely allows me to afford other things in life that don't require, a $7 a day habit. Join me as I begin my nicotine quit journey. April 10th is my quit date. Start focusing on what it takes to give up nicotine for good, when it comes right down to it. And April 10th is also my medical procedure for those over 40s. You know what I'm talking about. Tomorrow, Wednesday, the 8th, I begin my clear liquid diet. I begin my journey to cleansing, and then Thursday we'll begin our cleanse. I don't know if I'm going to document it. I think I kind of want to. I think people would be interested in to see what goes into preparation for a colonoscopy. Maybe they're not, but definitely we'll put that entertainment out there, and we'll see what comes of it. But April 10th, we're going to begin our quit tobacco journey, and ultimately quit nicotine. I've been buying pouches, the Zyn pouches, in different variations to see if there's anything out there that's going to make it easier for me to quit. Switching over from long cut tobacco to something a little more healthy. But we're going to try that. Let's see how the attitude changes and how things go. We'll digest the mood swings. We're going to journal this journey and see how things go. So, getting the mental preparation in place, getting ready for that change. Amongst that is going to be a physical transformation and a mental transformation. And we're going to do what we can to document that journey for people out there that have been a majority of their life consumed by nicotine. This has been the hardest journey so far, and it hasn't even begun yet. Quitting smoking was as simple as quitting buying. Chewing tobacco, well, that's kind of been a part of me for the last 30 years or so, and it's going to be another hard thing for me to do, but we're going to make it happen. So until our paths cross, ladies and gentlemen, stay strong, stay focused, stay sober. We'll see you soon. Much love.